Okay, everyone see that? That's great. Okay, well, that was really interesting to hear who our audience is, wasn't it? Fantastic. So I think we've already introduced ourselves, haven't we? So I think we're going to share bits and pieces of the presentation. So I hope I've covered everything in here. We're going to start with the background, and Salim's going to talk to us about the background to publishing practices. And then we're going to go into the predatory side, the dark side of publishing, and how to distinguish good quality journals and good quality publishing from disreputable. What can be done about it? And lots of this will be interactive as well, so there'll be lots of opportunities to go and have a look at some examples. And then Sarah's going to take over and talk about ethical publishing and hopefully build on what you learned this morning about academic writing to try and encourage you to start your writing if you haven't done so already. But lots of opportunity for discussions and questions. So we want it to be as interactive as possible. So if you have questions, feel free to talk. So what we'd like you to do when we finish this workshop, you should have gained some awareness about academic publishing, about the options, and also about the threats. You should know something about how to tell the difference between scholarly and poor quality journals, publishers, and also these fake conferences. And you should understand how to prepare and submit a journal article. So you should learn a little bit more about that. So hopefully you'll enjoy it just as much as you've enjoyed the presentation so far. So I want to start off by asking you to think about academic publishing. So what are the benefits of academic publishing? And for this one, I want you to put your ideas in the chat. So think about, as an author of an academic journal paper, what are the benefits of academic publishing to you? So that's one angle. If it's not too much, when you've thought about the benefits to an author, think about the benefits of academic publishing to a reader. And you are both an author and a reader. If you're not an author already, you will be very soon. But we're all readers of academic research. So what are the benefits of academic publishing to us? What do we get out of being able to read good quality journal papers and about research that's going on? And then perhaps Sarah would like to respond to the last one. What are the benefits to publishers? So why would you be a publisher? Why would you set up a journal, and what are the benefits to the publishing? So there's three different angles there, lots of things to think about. So I'm going to ask you all to just put stuff in the chat and let's have a look and have some thoughts on that. Yeah, that's a very good question, Sarah. So how many of you are required to publish? I would be interested in that as well, as graduate students. So society benefits from your knowledge. That's a really good one. In Turkey, we have to publish in a SSCI journal. How many papers? Is it just one, or is it two, or is it three? So here we've got from Amy, sharing knowledge with the wider academic community. It's absolutely perfect. Just one, okay. For the author, benefits could be related to tenure, scholarships. Yeah, for the reader, benefits could be connected to expand knowledge. Yeah. It feels great to add a brick to the wall of literature. That's very good. Very good. Adding a brick to the wall. H-index, yeah. Helps to develop one's inner thoughts. Get used to extensive reading, facilitates intellectual knowledge and sharing. Yeah, yeah. And Vivek said the same, add a brick to knowledge building. Motivation to research more, yeah, when your work is acknowledged. Yeah, that's really, these are really, really good. I'm a journal editor and serve on 17 journal editorial boards. I hope they're not predatory, we'll find out soon. Social science, yeah, thank you, Sarah. I was trying to think of that on the fly and it didn't quite come out. So keep them coming. Active engagement in the conversation. Yeah, so you might incentivize someone, you might motivate someone else. These are all brilliant, so keep them coming. So there are lots and lots of benefits. That's really what I wanted you to think about to start with for academic publishing, if it's done well. But there are also downsides to academic publishing if it's not done well. So in terms of what my thoughts were, and you found some that I hadn't thought of. So I thought, from the author's point of view, communicating, sharing your knowledge, perhaps meeting the requirements of your qualification, which could be your PhD, maintaining your academic post. So some people have to publish in order to continue in post. Some people have to publish to get promotion, to get a raise in salary, or in certain parts of the world, people get bonuses for publishing in a highly ranked journal. Building a reputation as an expert is a really important bonus, a really important benefit from publishing. Input from peer review to improve your writing and your research as well. So that's a really important benefit from publishing in a good quality review. And if you don't get peer review, if the peer review is weak, then you won't actually get that kind of input. You won't get that kind of benefit, and certainly to improve your scholarship and your writing style. In terms of being a reader, you're going to enhance your knowledge. You're going to learn quite a lot by reading, and you also learn how to write by reading, because I certainly improved my writing style a lot by just doing a lot of reading, and certainly you learn about vocabulary, you learn how to structure your work and so on. In terms of also as a reader, researching, finding the relevant literature, finding the underpinnings to your research, so that you're not having to reinvent the wheel and you're building on knowledge that's already out there. Understanding different perspectives. So there might be some ideas that are different to yours that you weren't aware of. So by reading around the subject, you'll learn about those. And a really important benefit is finding other people who are working in the same field. And when I started researching in academic integrity, in plagiarism and so on, just doing the literature review was an important part of it, because as a result of reading the literature, I found Tracy Brettag, and that led me to lots of other people, and that really started our kind of global community of scholars. So I think being a reader is really very important, and you can't write without reading. So you have to do reading and writing go together as skills. I don't know whether Sarah wants to come here in at this point, but certainly my take on the journal publisher and the journal editor, making the benefits. A great benefit is making the results and from good quality research available to researchers around the world, and sort of curating the research for that reason. Building a reputation that it attracts a readership and attracts authors who want to publish in that journal. So that's a really important benefit. But clearly, a lot of companies are financial, and there needs to be, there is a need to cover costs, and there is a need to make a profit if you have shareholders and so on. But there are a lot of duties to being a journal publisher. I don't know whether Sarah wants to take over. Perhaps I'm putting you a bit on the spot here. So
no, it's probably not fine.
In this slide.
Thanks for this. And it's interesting because you had journal publisher and editor, and those can be different, very different roles.
Absolutely.
I came into this, it was in 2017 or so. I was working with a woman who's now one of my doctoral students, Brandi Yusek, and she'd done a lot of work in Canada on academic integrity. And we were talking, and she said some of the wisdom, particularly of practitioners, is lost because they don't necessarily have opportunities to share what they know with others. They might present at conferences, but often those slide decks aren't shared further. And I said, Brandi, there needs to be a way for practitioners in particular to share what they know, so we can not keep reinventing the wheel, but build a community around it. And so we kept talking and talking, and it connected with some of our librarians here. We ended up starting a journal. We started Canadian Perspectives on Academic Integrity, and it's a free journal. One of the tricks, of course, though, is that you either have to be Canadian or write with a Canadian to publish in the journal. But they started as a practitioner journal, and then it grew. And now we call it a hybrid journal. Hybrid journals can mean different things. It can also mean open access versus subscription. I'm sure Irene will talk about that. But now we consider hybrid both practitioner and peer-reviewed articles. So for the practitioners who are maybe unfamiliar with writing or a little scared about writing, we provide a lot of development and support for writers in that way. And then, a few years later, as I was going on in my publishing career, and like Irene was inspired in so many ways by Tracy Bertag, she had started the International Journal for Educational Integrity, but she also started that journal using the same, say, online platform that we'd use for Canadian Perspectives. It's called Open Journal Systems, and it's a way of creating a free journal. And so when she was looking for someone to work alongside her in the International Journal for Ed Integrity, it happened that I had the same experience as her. I had started a journal. It was a free journal. It was a labor of love, completely run by volunteers, used on the same platform. So in many ways, I had followed in her footsteps without knowing it at the time. And so now working as the International Journal. So I don't work as the editor for Canadian Perspectives anymore, but certainly for me as a journal publisher for Canadian Perspectives, an editor now for the International Journal for Ed Integrity, which for whom the publisher is actually Springer Nature, and they own the journal. The benefits, I think, are people being able to share their wisdom and knowledge, and through rigorous peer review, ensure that it's quality work that's shared. For the practitioners, we provide editorial support in Canadian Perspectives, but sharing what you know, documenting it for those who come after you. And it's just such a wonderful way to learn about our field and grow it. So I hope that helps, Irene.
Yes, it does. That's brilliant. Do you want to add anything now, Salim? I'm going to ask Salim to take over at this point.
Okay, that's fine. Irene?
Yeah.
Assign me for the control, or will you be doing this?
I can assign you control if I can work out how to do that.
Right, you can just change the slides. That's fine to me as well.
Yeah, I'll change the slides. That's probably easier, isn't it?
That's better.
Yes, let's do it that way.
Okay. After this introduction, now I guess it would be good to learn about the background of publishing. I mean, how academic publishing worked in the past and how it is working now, and how will it look like in the future. In the traditional publishing model, we saw that institutions subscribed to journals, and their libraries, institutional libraries, provided access to their readers in order to read the academic publications. The subscription, of course, required some funds for the universities, and especially during the crisis time, that's called as serious crisis, many institutions were in debt, and they were not maintain their subscription to the journal. So this was regarded as a problem, as an issue at that time. Therefore, there was limited access to academic publications. And considering when we are talking about pre-millennium, we are talking about hard copy publications. So digital publications at that time were not that frequently available. So people depended on hard copy publications, and access to these publications were limited. Then by the new millennium, there was a new movement towards open access publication model. What happens in the open access publication model? Indeed, it was a reaction against traditional publishing model, because people were criticizing, academics were criticizing journals, especially publishers, since they required money from the readers. This time, open access publication model aimed to make it freely available for anyone who has internet connection. So you can download the article from an open access journal and then read it freely. Then the question is, how do they maintain their operations? I mean, the journals. Of course, they will need some finance to run their business. This time, the finance is provided by the author. I mean, they are asking authors money to pay in order to publish in their journals. This is recently what we know as article processing charges. Okay, this seemed to be a good movement at that time. However, considering people with bad intentions, it later turned out to be a disadvantage to the academia, because it provides basis for the operations of predatory publishers. Before I move forward to the details of open access publishing models, I'd like to also call your attention to preprints. Preprints, such publications previously used once articles were accepted for publication by journals. So people would make them available to with the readers before they got published. However, recently we see that preprints are used as a different model of publication. I mean, after the publication of the journal article, people keep posting preprints so that they make their articles freely available to the readers. Okay, when we check the three models involved in open access publication, we see green open access, gold open access, and hybrid open access. Green open access requires institutional cooperation, and institutions can make some publications freely accessible. Secondly, gold open access, which requires fees, article processing charges paid usually by the author. Authors pay this fee and they make their paper available, openly available for anyone. And then they try to increase the impact of their research. Or sometimes some journals may combine the two features together, green and gold open access models that we call as hybrid models. Again, this requires some institutional fee processing or fee by the author. Now we have issues here. What issue do we have here? Irene, could you please move forward to gold open access model, how it works? Here, for example, we see the steps involved in gold open access model here. First, what happens as a researcher? The researcher gets the funding and then writes the project, reports the results of the project, and submits the manuscript to the journal. And then the editor runs peer review and accept the paper for publication. Now, when it comes to publication, there are some issues regarding copyright. For example, once published, who will have the copyright? The author, the journal, or the publisher? So this should be clarified here. And in gold open access model, the copyright is left to the author. However, the journal will make this publication freely available at the fifth stage that we see. It means that it will require paying article processing charges, which might be dangerous if not carefully planned. I mean, if in the case of involvement, bad intention, people with bad intention, then predatory journals here may function, may maintain their aims here. The aim of gold open access is making your publication freely available, so anyone with internet can read your paper. Indeed, in terms of dissemination, this is a very good opportunity, and considering financial differences between countries and researchers' access to scientific publication, this is a very good movement. However, article processing charge should be carefully controlled. Irene, we can move forward. So from these models, we see that okay, we now have the issue of predatory publishers because of open access model. Although it is a good model, we experience this problem here. One more slide, please, Irene, before I leave word to you. So I'd like to clarify three important key terminologies for you before we move forward. Predatory publishers, vanity press, and hijacked journals. If you have visited Jeffrey Bill's webpage list, you should be already familiar with these terminologies. Predatory journals will be referring to journals or publishers that are giving priority to their interests. I mean, indeed, they are not academics, they are not people involved in academics, they are just running a business, and they are using the academia, and they claim that they are running peer review processes for publishing academic papers. However, indeed, they do not run peer review process, or the peer review process that they claim to run is not effective at all. They are usually aggressive. They have aggressive manners, and there is lack of transparency in their publication process. So their only intention is focused on article processing charges, so getting the money. Secondly, when it comes to vanity press, this is a different version of predatory publishers. Predatory publishers claim that they run peer review process. However, vanity press never claim that they are running peer review process. Vanity press may publish anything. Vanity press usually target MA students or PhD students and invite them to publish their thesis as a book. So they will be sending emails and invite people to publish. So how do they make money? Let's say, for example, as a student, when I submit my thesis, I send it to a vanity publisher, they publish it. The publication here, indeed, is not a hard copy publication. They just make it digitally available, and on demand, they are printing individual copies of the book and then selling it to a very expensive rate. And usually they are the first buyers of the book will be its authors. For hijacked journals, we have a very complicated issue here. This time, bad intentioned people, they copy journal web pages, and then these are usually credible journals web pages, and they imitate these web pages, and they invite people to submit papers to their journals, assuming that you submit a paper, assuming that it is a credible journal, index journal. However, indeed, it is a copy of a reputable journal. Of course, too bad, their only aim is pocketing the money. They don't have any other. They don't have any other aims there. Irene, I guess I'll leave it to you here.
It would help if I turn my mic on before I start to speak, but apart from that, thank you very much, Salim, for setting the scene and for doing all the definitions. So any thoughts on these two questions? First of all, why do people publish? And what we've called them here is PPJs. We're saying potentially predatory journals because it's actually very difficult. It's not a black and white science. We can't say definitely yes, definitely no. So we're calling them PPJs for short, but essentially, why do you think people publish in PPJs? What are the reasons why someone would publish in a poor quality journal or in a predatory journal? So let's have some thought in the... Yes, thanks, Oscar. Let's have your thoughts in the chat. Why do people publish? Or feel free to open your mic and talk if you wish. Put your hand up if you want to say it out loud rather than put it in the chat. Right, in Turkey you have to publish to receive degree titles. It's a quick way to publish. Yeah, so if you get published in a proper, reputable peer-reviewed journal, it takes some time. What's the average time, Sarah, from submitting to publishing in the
International Journal of Ed Integrity? I'm just looking because we publish those stats on our website. It is typically 126 days from submission to acceptance.
Yeah.
And then from acceptance to publication, it's an additional 30 days. So we're looking at between 150 and 160 days on average, but it can be longer depending on the peer review process.
So we've got some more here to fulfill institutional grant requirements, lack of knowledge. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why it's important that we run sessions like this, and perhaps those attending here might wish to run this for their own students in the future and pass the knowledge on. When you can't publish in a good one, you have to pay to get it published. Yeah, but you sometimes have to pay anyway. But and yeah, in Indonesia too. So unawareness, the difference between genuine and predatory. Yeah, it's wrong because there's no authentic contribution to knowledge. Yeah, absolutely. So the second question now, what is wrong with publishing? So Beatrice has offered, it's wrong because there is no authentic contribution to knowledge. Because the point about publishing in a reputable journal is people know where to find that research, they know where to find your results. If you publish in an obscure predatory journal, nobody's going to be able to find it and read it. So it actually is, it's a waste of everyone's effort, isn't it, really? When you cannot publish enough, you might lose your job. It's true, and certainly in some countries, you have and this is one of the reasons behind the publish or perish label, is that some people in some countries and some institutions, they have a quota for publishing. So unless you publish so many papers a year, you can't get reappointed to your job, or you can't get promotion. All of that. Yes, and you can show it on your CV, that's right. Lack of assurance of publication quality because the editors are not experts in the field, absolutely. So you don't actually get that input to improve your paper that you would do through a reputable journal. Yeah, to meet the requirements. Okay, let's have a look what we've got on the next slide, which was kind of my take on this. And there are some things in there that I think that are built on some of these basic things I've said here. So my answers to the first question is publish or perish, ignorance, desperation sometimes to fulfill incentives and requirements. Publication is quicker. Publications, oh dear, the grammar in that is terrible. Sorry about that. I didn't spot that error. Publications are quicker. Publication is quicker. Less chance of rejection. So a lot of the predatory journals don't reject any papers at all. They will accept everything that's sent to them, regardless of quality. They won't provide any peer review. So what is wrong with publishing the PBJ? Lack of peer review, no specialist focus, no readership, no audience, no curation. So if you publish in a predatory journal, there's no guaranteeing how long it will persist as an available resource, and people won't know where to find it. And the biggest problem with predatory journals is because of the lack of peer review, because of the lack of expertise and care and scholarship in the production of predatory journal papers, all sorts of rubbish gets published. So I know Jeremy Beale likes to call it pseudoscience, so I've used his term there. But you know, generally anything can get published, and there's some really funny examples of people who have submitted complete rubbish to predatory journals, and it's been published just as it was. And it may enter the mainstream as if it's genuine research. And I've got a little hobby which I use. I look. I don't know whether some of you are aware, but some of these journals they harvest names of the editorial board, and they put the names and photographs of people and their CVs on their website. And often these people don't know anything about the fact that they're listed as being associated with one of these journals, and they wouldn't wish to be, because it wouldn't do very much for their reputation. So I have a hobby: when I find one of these websites, I will look at some unlikely people, and I will contact them and ask them if they're aware they're on these websites. And I did that yesterday. I've actually found one of these, and when I chased up on this what looked like a very eminent American academic, I discovered he was a peddler of pseudoscience. So I didn't bother following up on that one and checking up on him, but it would be an interesting thing to do anyway, perhaps when I get a bit more time. So so we're going to talk about how to distinguish reputable from disreputable. And I'm going to start by just showing you some emails, because most of my contact with these comes through email. And I don't know whether any of you get emails from these from journals offering you publishing opportunities, or even special edition opportunities and so on. I get a lot of them, and I get them in my inbox every single day. And I save some of them up that are quite funny, and I also share them, examples, with other people. So I'm going to show you a few of those now on the slide deck. So I want you to have a look at these examples. The text is quite small, so I hope you can read the text. And I want you to have a look at and see whether there are any clues that you can see in these examples of emails that make you realize these are not genuine. So let's have a look, see what we've got. So here's the first one. And I've put a little note in the orange there, but this wasn't sent to me. This was sent to a very close colleague of mine. I haven't put his name on there, but he gave me his permission to reproduce it for you. Now, this person's name is Robin. He's not called Roxy. He's not called Senior. So that will give you a little clue to start with. And Robin is actually a mathematician stroke computer scientist. So have a look at this email that he received, and what are the clues in this email that this is relating to a non-reputable, or certainly, if not a predatory journal. So have some thoughts about this. And put your, either speak out loud if you wish, or put your thoughts in the chat if you prefer. So what do you think? What are the clues? There are lots of them in here.
Sorry, Irene, I missed. Did you say his background was in cardiology?
This person is a computer scientist and a mathematician.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and this was what he received. So what are the clues? Absolute dead. No response at all. Mathematician, yes, mathematician receiving something related to oncology is a rather strange thing. Bad grammar, absolutely. Not his field, outside their field. We just love the fact that he was called Roxy Senior as well. The fact that they didn't actually use his name, and we've no idea what that meant. So this is. Yes, so if you get something from entirely outside your own field, if it's not even addressed to you, then clearly you're not going to respond to that, and very badly targeted. So let's move on to the second one. Right, so this is an invitation that I've received to a conference. And this is addressed to me personally with my full name. And it's actually relating to education. So they've actually targeted it right, because that is my field. And so why would I think there's something strange about this? Any thoughts?
Irene, I love how this particular email says that to contact them to finalize the details of your talk without having your proposal peer reviewed.
Absolutely. Yeah. So these kind of things, it sounds too good to be true. It doesn't mention anything about cost, does it? No, so they're not going to pay my expenses to Singapore, are they? I don't think. It doesn't mention that. And they just want my speech title, and then they'll be able to finalize it. So there's no suggestion here. They're suggesting that I might be a keynote speaker, which is kind of appealing to flatter me, to say, you know, we think you're very important. But they certainly haven't really any knowledge of what kind of topic it would be and whether it would fit in. And how many other people have they sent the same invitation to? So, you know, it's likely I'll get there, and it will, if I was going to go to it, and there'll be nobody actually from my specific field at the conference. So it would be a waste of time and effort and energy, plus the fact it's going to cost me a lot of money. The other giveaway in this one, and they're all very similar, is that it's very much about the side benefits of going to the conference rather than the conference itself. So that's a good giveaway. It's not written in a very academic style, is it? So here's another one. So this is from the Science Journal of Education. And I do get quite a few from this same company. And I don't know whether you can see, but it's a very strange font on this one. Can you look at the B in contributing? Very strange font. And so but it says it's a peer-reviewed academic journal. But the font isn't quite right. It all looks very strange, and the English isn't terribly good. Any other thoughts? It all looks pretty above board, doesn't it? There is a website there. But I'm going to show you another one. Oh, can you see in the actual the title at the top? Instead of an A, there's an alpha in the word journal. You see that? So it's not even written in normal alphabetic characters. It's all a bit strange. And this is from the same journal, but this is received a few days apart from the other one, and it's a completely different styling from a completely different person. So it's not just the content of the emails; it's the fact that you get a lot of them, and you get them from different people. And here, can you spot some spelling mistakes on this one? Apart from again the strange font. There's some spelling mistakes there. Yeah. So when you've seen a few of these, so how many of you are getting these kind of emails? Do you receive them, or don't you receive them? Let me know. How many of you receive them? Some of you? Yeah, I receive often, I do, yes, every day, yeah. So these are coming in. And were you aware that these were not good quality? I hope you were aware already. So you see, it says there in yellow, in orange there, it says eminent database without an E on the end, and peer reviewing with a hyphen in the words. It's all a little bit strange. And here's another conference one. This one is in China. Again, very, very strange, and even the phone number is very strange, very peculiar. Waiting for you, and I don't know, you know, who would respond to something like this. Who would? And these are this particular one is tied with publishing, so that the conference is a fake conference, and it's tied in with a predatory journal or a poor quality journal at least. So there's a few examples there for you to kind of look at. And so this is a list taken from a paper by Sack. The references at the end of the deck. And it's not a perfect list, but there are a few pointers here about what to look for and how to distinguish between whether or not it's reputable or not. I think those examples, I don't think any of us would have fallen for those and be fooled by them. Is that right? Would anyone have chosen any of those? I'm not sure. I certainly wouldn't have. But then I've been looking at them for a long time. one of the first things you can do is to talk to other people who are publishing in the same field as you and ask them if they know anything about the journal. Is this a journal you're published in? Can you find some articles in those journals? Have you read them? Do they look like good quality journal articles? And if so, are they in the right field? Is it likely your paper will be read if you published in there? Can you identify and contact the publisher? Is the publisher's name there? And quite often in these emails that I get, there are different names, and the different names that appear every time I get a different email. There's a different name on there, and I think they do that to stop the emails getting blocked within university servers, because that's what we do. We block the names, so they keep changing the names all the time to stop that, so they can get through. Is the journal clear about the type of peer review it uses? Are the articles indexed in reputable indexes such as Scopus, Web of Science, and so on? And Salim's going to talk to us about indexing in a little while. You could use a whitelist to see whether your chosen, or even a blacklist to see whether your chosen journal is on that whitelist or blacklist to give you more information. Is it clear what fees will be charged? And certainly on the conference ones, there was no mention of any fees, but I know really with some certainty that if I said, yes, I was interested, I would then be charged some fees. Do you recognise the editorial board? And as I just said earlier on, one of my little hobbies is to look at editorial boards and see if I can spot people who are very unlikely to be part of the editorial board, and then to contact them. And that's quite an interesting little exercise. Invariably, I get people who are absolutely outraged that they're on there. Is the publisher a member of a recognised publishing industry initiatives such as the Committee on Publication Ethics? So do they look like reputable people? Do they look like as if they're scholarly in their way? As well as all the kind of spelling mistakes and poor grammar and so on. So that was slightly adapted from that list from SAC. It's far from complete though, and there are things wrong with that list. I don't know whether you can spot them, but a few of the things I spotted there are some of the poor quality journals are already they are included in indexes, even though they're poor quality, even though they might be predatory. Certainly a lot of them are listed in Scopus or the Directory of Open Access Journals, and certainly hijacked journals are likely to be in there or confused with real journals that are in there. The details in the emails and the details on the websites may actually be very reassuring, but they might not be actually what happens. They might be misleading or fraudulent, and you have to be really careful about when you're reading those, not to be taken in by fraudulent claims. They might claim that peer review will be carried out, and maybe the peer review either won't be carried out at all, or if it is carried out, it will lack any kind of meaningful input for you, or certainly lack rigor. But also a lot of fake journals, a lot of PPJs use or invent their own indexes, and again, Salim will say more about that later on. So there are lots of reasons to be aware of things that are on that checklist. You need to be really skeptical. It's important that when you do publish, you publish in a journal that is a good journal for you, and it is going to result in the effort that you put into being published having a good result for you and for your readers as well. So what we're going to do now, we've had a look at some emails. We're now going to have a look at some websites. And what we're going to try to do now is to put ourselves into 3 breakout rooms. And is anyone adept at putting people into breakout rooms? Are we going to just do it randomly? Have we got the facilities for breakout rooms?
Yeah, we have this facility.
Okay. Are you able to do that? Can you just randomly assign people to the 3
Okay,
breakout rooms?
randomly. Okay, I'm doing this.
And then what we're going to do in the breakout rooms, Salim will take 1 room, Al will take room 2, and Sarah will take room 3. And we're going to look at some websites, see what we can see in the websites and see what we can find out from the websites.
Just a second, please. Okay, we now have 3 breakout rooms.
Now you're inviting me to join room 3, is that right?
Oh, it's automatically inviting people. So let me check myself.
Okay.
I don't see myself assigned anywhere.
Ah, so it hasn't assigned
I
you
don't
to-
think you would be as the host. I think you have to assign yourself. So why don't we each assign ourselves to a particular room? So I can go to room 3.
So I see that Irene is in room 3. If you like, I can.
I'm going to go to room 2. Sorry, I still am not going to room 3. I refuse room 3. I'm going to go to room 2.
Okay, that's fine. So I go to room 1, right?
Okay, that's good.
Okay, so how much time do
Okay.
you have?
And I'll go to
So-
room 3.
Shall we have 20 minutes or so?
20 minutes, okay.
Okay, so we will finish at about 22. Is that okay?
Okay, that's fine.
We'll rejoin. Can you close the rooms at that point?
Okay, so 20 minutes. So it is 17 now. So
Okay,
we will finish by 37.
okay.
Okay, deal. I go to room 1. See you then.
Salem, we don't hear you.
Oh, sorry, Sarah. When I came back, I was muted. So we were talking about after checking some web pages and some sample call for papers, we were checking about possible criteria that may help us identify predatory publishers. And Akbar said, for example, review time. Okay, it's very important if they claim, for example, very fast publication, such as 3 days for review and immediately after this they'll be publishing online. It is guaranteed that it is a predatory publisher. It is impossible to finalize peer review process in such a short time. Irene?
Yes, hi. Yeah.
Came back.
So we looked at one conference site and a couple of other publishers, and I deliberately chose ones that looked really respectable, and I think the people from room 2 will speak for themselves really on what their thoughts were, but I would say in some cases, if you just looked at the website, you wouldn't necessarily immediately realise, apart from perhaps the massive scope of the subjects that the journals cover, and perhaps the frequency of the publishing. But we then also looked at frontiers. Okay, and I thought I would deliberately show them the frontiers. Group of publishing company, and because that is a grey one, isn't it? Because Geoffrey Beale included that on his list, and that was probably one of the last publishing companies that he added to his list. And I think there was a big pushback from the Frontiers company as a result of him adding that to the predatory journals list. I've certainly worked as a peer reviewer for Frontiers. I was asked to do peer reviews. I hesitated for a while, but I decided I would use it as an experience to find out a little bit more about the company. And I have to say, it was an interesting experience. They certainly, my peer review was taken seriously and followed up, and it went through a normal cycle that you would expect a reputable journal to go through. But the interesting difference with Frontiers, with the journal that I reviewed for, is that they publish the name of the peer reviewers with the paper, which I'm not aware any other publishers do. I don't know whether anyone else has come across any others that do that. I had no objection to that happening. I thought that was an interesting kind of transparent way of doing peer review. But having looked at the people from my room can speak for themselves, but having looked at the website, it did look very reputable, and they were showing indexing on quite a lot of the journals. So any other comments or any thoughts from my team? No, but there was a really interesting question at the end. Hatice, do you want to just come and ask your question?
So actually, I asked a question because that question came to my mind as you did your presentation. You said that there's no guarantee that the journal is there all the time, because if it's a predatory journal, then it's not always accessible. So what does that do to your publication if the journal is not accessed anymore? And also, I had one experience as well, as I have mentioned. In the break room, I had published in a journal before, and then it was sold to a big publishing house, I think in India, and now they are not as trustworthy, I think, anymore. So what does that do to my publication again? And I believe it will lose its indexes soon. So how is this evaluated? Because when I published my paper, it was indexed in several indexes. And now when it's not, what does it do to my publication, past publication?
I didn't have the answer to those questions. I don't know whether anyone else has, but it's a very interesting situation to be in, isn't it? So that's the input from my room, and there are some questions. So I don't know whether anyone would like to contribute to those questions, but it was an interesting experience. So what happened in your room, Sarah?
We also looked at two sort of gray areas as well. And I will say, Irene, that our librarians have had a lot to say about frontiers. They used to be very much against it. And our university used to pay our article processing charges for certain journals, but Frontiers was not included. And then later they decided they could include them because they had achieved a certain level of legitimacy, scientific legitimacy. And so this was almost the theme that was in the two rooms that we looked at. I put the organizations in the chat because I think these are organizations that are striving potentially for legitimacy, but really they are effectively event planning organizations. And Nyland made the comment for WASET that it looks like a travel agency when you go to their website. So you're picking your conference not based on the topic, but the destination. So you could have gone to Singapore, Paris, Toronto, and that you would go there. And then we noted that there would be 100 conferences of the same day, all in different discipline areas. So we talked about these. In particular, I said I had graduate students who'd been directly targeted by these two particular organizations that seem to focus more on the business of event planning than on scholarly contributions. So we talked a little bit about that. And Hatice, I'm sorry, I have no answer for your question, but it's an interesting conundrum. And I will say, when we get into the ethical publishing piece, the International Journal for Educational Integrity was at one point sold. So it used to be run on a volunteer basis by Tracy Bertag through the Open Journal System, OJS, completely run by volunteers. And as a result, doesn't look as fancy as some of the other ones. You don't get a citation score. There's no impact factor. It's very grassroots, as we would say. And then she basically got sort of overwhelmed over time with doing all of the work every single week for the journal. So she sold it to Springer Nature. And then if you go to I can show you the journal website, they took over about 10 years after she'd run the journal as a volunteer organization. And so now all of the production work is done by Springer. So I've heard of journals going sort of in that direction, and they will provide supports, things like a citation score, those sorts of things over time. But the situation you're describing actually sounds much worse. Yeah.
Sarah, Irene?
Yeah, do you want to talk about what happened in your room, Selim?
Indeed, we also talk about frontiers as well, because I received a call for papers from a conference last night, and I just showed this call for papers as a sample there, and we try to identify whether it is a legitimate one or not. The conference is promising for Social Science Citation Index journal publications. The two journals are one Frontier, the other one Sustainability, both indexed by Social Science Citation Index. However, both received, both were listed in Beall's list, later removed from the list. So we talk about this and try to identify some characteristics which may not seem appropriate there. We also checked Wolfania Journal, hijacked Wolfania Journal as a sample, and also we checked the legitimate journals webpage. Hijackers usually target journals which are not published in English or which do not have proper web pages, so that they can create the web page and then they can mimic these journals. The original Wolfania is indexed again by Web of Sciences. However, the hijack one, of course, it means nothing. We also saw a sample from a legitimate publisher, I mean, conference and journal interaction. So we saw Symposium on Second Language Writing as a sample. and they are feeding their journal, which has a quite high impact factors. This is a journal of second language writing. So we were talking about the characteristics, possible characteristics of predatory publishers when we came back to the room.
Okay, I hope that was useful for everyone. It's quite an interesting exercise to just have a look at the characteristics of these websites. And I think you need to take into account all the information you've got about a publisher. If you're thinking about taking them up on an offer, look at the emails, look at the invitation, look at what's been said in that, and be skeptical. And if in doubt, ask somebody for guidance and advice, and don't just go ahead and on the off chance that it might be okay, because you might just end up wasting all your effort, and you wouldn't really want to do that. Okay, I think now might be a good opportunity to have a little bit of a break, because we've got kind of a natural pause. So shall we have a break for 15 minutes or so? Just give us all a chance to just have a little walk around and stretch our legs a little bit, go to the loo, make a cup of tea, whatever. So if we meet again at about 5 past, okay? We'll
See you then.
Yeah, feel free to chat among yourselves if you want, if you don't want to go anywhere, but I think just all have a little break and wake up a little bit, and then we'll go into the next session. Okay.
Oh, 5 past.
See you soon. 5 past. Yes.
Okay.
5 past. I won't say the hour because it's a different hour for everybody, but I think we're all on the same, approximately on the same minute, aren't we? Or is anyone different? But anyway, Central European time, 5 past.
I wish someone had presented a session like this when I was a graduate student.
Well, I have to say, I really haven't had any, I didn't have any training on any of this really. None of the whole week really is something that, but fortunately, I hope people do seem very appreciative of what we're doing. So that's good. Okay, so I don't know whether we're all back yet, but I just thought I'd just summarise where we were with this and what we've just observed, what we've just seen, and then I'll hand over to Salim to talk about indexes, and then that then leads on to Sarah's part. So, and you know, I didn't think we would be, but we're in danger of running out of time. It's very easy to fill 3 hours, isn't it, really, when you're having fun. So I think this just summarises what the kind of clues that we look for to know whether we're dealing with reputable or disreputable journals and publishing companies. Uninvited and frequent emails, frequently including lots of flattery and appealing to your kind of sense of honour. The frequency of publications, the frequency of events, how many editions there are, and also the short interval is a real giveaway between submitting, maybe claiming there's going to be some peer review, but you know, within a week or so you're going to have it fully published. Plus the fact that you're unlikely to be rejected. Often that's not said, but you know, that tends to be what happens. Off-subject invitations, so that particularly that one to that colleague of mine, to Roxy Senior, where it was all about oncology, and he's actually a mathematician, nothing to do with that subject at all. I frequently get them from about agriculture and forestry, so you know, what do I know about this subject? Poor spelling and grammar, strange fonts, strange styles of writing. There's an email I got this morning, or I found this morning, that was, look at that email there, Rabbit Tigger. There was another one that came yesterday, and it was beige banana, which I thought was quite quaint. So, but frequently they're using a variety of different emails to stop the spam emails getting blocked by university servers. And they often use personal emails from Yahoo and Gmail and so on. Often they claim to be operating out of, say, Canada, UK, USA, but actually when you look in more detail at where they're operating from, it may be from India, maybe from China, maybe from somewhere else in the world. So they're kind of deceiving you into thinking they're operating from where you are or where you might think is respectable. Lack of clarity about fees and expenses, that's not always the case, but sometimes that happens where they don't actually mention fees and expenses until you've already committed. And if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So if you're being invited to be a keynote speaker, if you're invited to be a member of the editorial board, unless you have a reputation that would warrant that, then it's probably a sign that this is not a reputable journal. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Salim at this point, who's going to talk to us about black and white lists and citation indexes. Over to you.
Okay, thank you, Irene. So far, we already briefly mentioned indexes, reputable indexes, and we also referred to Jeffrey Beall's. Here, we will specifically try to identify what we mean by black and white lists, and also gray lists. If we refer to Beall's list, Beall defines his own list as possibly predatory publishers. So it doesn't guarantee that the journals or the conferences or any other names that are included in the list are predatory. However, there is a high probability of being them identified as predatory. We have some other lists since Jeffrey Bell stopped revising his list and retired in 2017. He doesn't work on the list anymore. However, there are some other web pages anonymously using his information and maintaining this process. The problem with the list, including Jeffrey Bell, we don't know very well what their criteria is. Indeed, Irene is running a working group for ENAI, and Jeffrey Bell attended our meeting. It was, I guess, 2 weeks ago, but we hadn't talked about the criteria. Maybe we can invite him for a future talk and talk about the criteria, so we become more knowledgeable about his criteria. However, the problem with the recent list, they are running anonymously, so we don't know who is doing what. Another list, both black and white list, might be Cable's list. They are providing the list, and also they are including the criteria that they are using. However, the issue with the Cable's list is it is a paid service. So this requires institutional subscription. So it means that a university library working very effectively requires devoting their time to identify the sources and then helping the staff. When we check the Clarivate analytics, this is also known as Web of Science, we see different indexes there, such as Science Citation Index, which is recently known as Expanded Index, Social Science Citation Index, Art and Humanities Citation Index, and Emerging Sources Citation Index. This is a reputable list. I mean, Web of Science is probably the most reputable source that we can refer regarding this. And considering the indexes here, Science Citation Index Expanded and Social Science Citation Index could be considered as the most reputable two indexes here. And Web of Science is using Emerging Sources Citation Index as a gateway to Social Science Citation Index or Science Citation Index. And for Art and Humanities Citation Index, the nature of the publications in Art and Humanities Citation Index are quite different from the other fields. Therefore, Web of Science do not calculate an impact factor. I'm going to refer to impact factors in the next slide. So they do not calculate an impact factor for Art and Humanities Citation Index. And also they do not calculate an impact factor for Emerging Sources Citation Index. So they will be calculating impact factor only for Science Citation Index and Social Science Citation Index. The other one, as an alternative to Web of Science, is Scopus. Scopus is providing Schimoca journal rankings. Probably you heard about Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4 journals. So they are listing the journals under Scopus indexes, and they have several criteria and categorize journals with reference to country, with reference to field. So you can see the top journals there. You can also see some indexes which are discipline specific. For example, for those who are studying, who are involved in educational sciences here, ERIC, which is based in United States, Educational Resource Information Center is a discipline specific index, or who are involved in medicine, PubMed is a discipline specific index. There are some other common indexes specifically dealing with open access publications, such as Directory of Open Access Journals or Open Access Scholarly Publishers Association. They are also listing journals, and we could consider these lists as gray lists. Although they are listing the journals, that it doesn't guarantee that they are not predatory publishers. Now, if we can move forward, Irene, please. Okay, we will be dealing with some key terminologies that might be associated with our previous categorization of indexes. Here, for example, let's start with impact factor. And impact factor is coming from Clarivate Analytics from Web of Science. As I said previously, impact factor is calculated for two groups of journals that are Social Science Citation Index journals, Science Citation Index expanded journals. Web of Science do not calculate impact factor for emerging sources citation and also arts and humanities citation indexes. Impact factor is considered as an important figure in terms of identifying the credibility, reputation of the journal. Of course, there are some drawbacks, there are some criticism against impact factors. However, at the first step, at the initial step, it could give an idea about the reputation of the journal. Here, for example, I have an example from Journal of Second Language Writing. You see an impact factor, the score is 3.077, which is considered quite good because impact factors, they are like eigenvalues, over 1 can be considered as quite high. Sarah should be more knowledgeable about it, and in her turn, I'm sure she's going to contribute to this. And the second one here I'll be referring to is site score, which is coming from Scopus metrics. So Web of Science and Scopus, they are two organizations that are providing these figures. One, Web of Science is, or Clarivate Analytics, they are providing impact factor. Scopus is providing site score. This time I'm going to give the example from the Journal of System. As you see, site score is 4.2. What do we mean by site scores or impact factors? Indeed, they are referring to statistics. Let's say, for example, there is a journal published 2020. So in order to calculate impact factor for 2020, Web of Science goes back to the previous 2 years and check how many articles they published in the previous 2 years and how many citations they received for the articles that they published in the previous 2 years. Of course, their citations and calculations will be all based to Web of Science. If the citations do not include, are not covered by Web of Science, then they won't be taken into consideration. So they are calculating these scores with reference to citations that they are receiving. Now I am moving forward to the third category here that we know as Q ranking. What is Q ranking? Q1, Q2, Q3, or Q4 journals. Q1, they are regarded to be the most reputable journals, and the rankings here will be based on Scopus metrics again. So Scopus in the Schemago is providing basis for this service and categorizing journals with reference to their specific disciplines and also with reference to regions. For example, here you see Sarah's journal, International Journal for Educational Integrity. It is included, it is covered as a Q1 journal, which means that it is among the most reputable journals in this field. And they are also providing a score regarding this. So in addition to checking impact factor or checking site score, it is also a good way to check the Q rankings for the journals. Ivan, I guess we can move forward. However, okay, we said that we have whitelist and blacklist. We refer to Scopus, we refer to Web of Science, and we are identified that Social Science Citation Index or Science Citation Index Expanded. They are most reputable indexes. However, do they include any possibly predatory journal? With reference to relevant literature, yes. Consider, for example, an article published by Nature here. Hundreds of predatory journals indexed on leading scholarly database. So it's a very recent study. And you see another project which was conducted in Czech Republic, IDEA. And they also check predatory bills list against Scopus indexes. And they identified the journals that are indexed in Scopus and also indexed in Bill's predatory list. So they indicated that almost 3% of the journals that are indexed under Scopus, they are predatory. So indeed, wide indexes, even reputable indexes, may include predatory publishers. Irene, we can move forward, I guess. And for the predatory publishers, when you check their web pages, there are some good clues that might help us identify spot predatory publishers. Consider, for example, international educational scientific research journals. Okay, scientific research, it's good name. And here you see an impact factor. The value is 5 point blah blah, which is very high. Now remember, impact factor can be calculated only for the journals that are indexed by Social Sciences Citation Index or Science Citation Index Expanded. All the other journals that are not covered in these two indexes do not have impact factors. And when you check, this journal is not indexed by Web of Science. It means that they cannot have an index factor. However, when you visit the web pages of predatory publishers, almost all of them claim an impact factor. Their impact factors, so-called impact factors, are coming from some other calculations. If you check, for example, the figure on the left hand, I got this figure from another predatory publisher. For example, you will recognize Index Copernicus. Index Copernicus is mostly associated with predatory publishers, and it welcomes predatory publishers and providing some scores that cannot be considered as impact factors. However, the journals wrongly claim that they are impact factors. So you also see International Education and Research Journal. So please read the explanation. Worldwide most trusted research publication platform, most trusted. So if you read such a claim, then how can we make sure that it is most trusted? So you should have some concerns about the credibility of this journal. International index journals, indexed by what? Peer-reviewed journals, blah blah approved journals. So indeed, they mean nothing. So we already know about credible indexes. We already know about impact factor and site score, and we know how we get Q1, Q2, Q3 journals. If it is Q1, it means that, okay, it is highly reputable. If it is Q2, okay, it could be publishable there. If it is Q3, there should be concerns. If it is Q4, it means that it is either predatory or could be a journal which stopped its operation. So please avoid Q3 or Q4 journals, or you should have some other strong evidences in order to publish with these journals. I guess I am done. Irene? No. Here is some clue identifying misleading metrics. Indeed, I adopted the expressions here from Bill. So when we check their web pages, what do we do? This time, be careful. We are not focusing on journals. We are focusing on indexes. Let's say, for example, we said index Copernicus. This is a problematic index because it welcomes predatory publishers. Now, I'm checking the web page of this index Copernicus, let's say, for example, and try to identify whether they provide adequate information on their web page. And secondly, do they charge journals in order to include in their list? And when we check their list, for example, if you go and check Social Science Citation Index, you do not see much changes with the number of publications that are covered there. However, if you are checking the list that are coming from suspicious metrics, suspicious indices, then you will see that they are growing regularly because they are covering more journals. It means that they are making more money from these journals. And what about their calculation? How do they calculate the scores? If it depends on Google Scholar, then it could be problematic because Google Scholar might be covering some other sources associated with the publications. And we need to, therefore, we need to check their web pages carefully in order to understand the method that they follow in order to calculate their metrics. Indeed, these are basic clues about the indices. Irene? Irene, we don't hear you. Irene, we don't hear you.
Sorry, what I was trying to say to myself that nobody could hear was, as we're running out of time, I'm going to skip that slide. Every time we'll go back to that at the end. So we really need to move on to Sarah's part now.
Yeah, sure. Sure, we can move on to preparing for publication. So we've sort of given you an idea. So you had your academic writing session this morning. Then we've highlighted to you the importance of being aware of predatory journals because they will solicit to you. They will send you emails and try and lure you in. One tip I often give to graduate students is usually reputable journals don't have to send spam emails or they don't send spam emails to try and attract people to the journal. If they have a special issue, for example, they might send a message out to their listservs in the scholarly community, but they don't spam people. And basically, if they're approaching you, then you want to ask yourself why. But let's say that you want to publish your work and you need to figure out where you want to publish your work. So I think we've shown you where not to go. So we might want to show you some places where you could go, for example. So we've already talked a little bit about the journal quality, so I won't spend too much time on that, but I will, just as an example, because I'm completely biased, and I'll declare my bias right there of looking at the International Journal for Educational Integrity. We can start there, and if you have an opportunity to go to the website, you can look there, and reputable journals will have an about page where, and we do in this journal as well, where it talks about the aims and scope of the journal. And the aims and scope of a journal tend to remain consistent over time, and they don't change too much. So you can go, for example, to the IJEI and see the things that it publishes. and it talks about educational integrity. That term was used by Tracy Bretagne to cover all kinds of integrity in educational contexts. So we tend to talk about academic integrity, often focused on student conduct. Tracy thought that educational integrity was a broader term, and that it would include things such as research integrity, for example, and that we would also have, we would address issues of pedagogy, academic standards, intercultural understanding, and equity. So these were the aims and scope that were developed by the journal when Tracy set it up many years ago. And she also talks about topics that, I say she, we at the journal, talks about topics that we publish on, but these are not, it's not an exclusive list, it's an example list. So things like plagiarism, cheating, academic integrity, honor codes, for example, we find more of those in the American context, teaching and learning, institutional integrity, and student motivation. And then we talk about the kind of research that we would publish, including empirical research, practitioner research, theoretical discussions, and review papers. So this is really a transdisciplinary journal. It's not only from humanities or social sciences or business. We accept papers from every discipline. As you're thinking about where your manuscripts go, looking at the aims and scope of the journal, I think is key. One of the basic reasons that a paper gets rejected, automatic rejection from the journal, in our journal and others as well, is that it doesn't meet the aims and scope of a journal. So for example, when I receive a manuscript that has nothing at all to do with ethics and integrity, then I just say, no, this is not the right journal for you. So there must be a match between the topic of your manuscript and the journal. So we can move on to the next slide, Irene. And one of the other considerations that's a very important topic these days in journal publishing is notions of authorship. And so I've put a resource link for you in the chat box, and it's from the Committee on Publication Ethics, which is a global community that looks at publication ethics and also complexities with publishing. And one of the most, I think, talked about things that we consider is authorial considerations. So who gets included as an author, and what about author order? And I wanted to stop and take a little pause now and invite you in the chat to talk about any conversations or what you know about author order or how it works in your discipline, because there are disciplinary differences around author order as well. And if you've had conversations with, for example, your graduate supervisor, or if you're part of a lab, and have you had open conversations about when you're preparing a paper, what's the author order? And maybe I'll invite Irene and Salim as well to ask for your thoughts on author order as well.
Sarah?
Yes, go ahead.
It's an important issue, especially considering young researchers, because they might be forced by their supervisors, by their professors to publish. And sometimes the professors, the supervisors are added as authors without any contribution to the papers. That's what we call as gifted authorship. So this is an academic misconduct. However, it is quite difficult for students to whistleblow about this, because when they do this, probably they will receive criticism, and this might be the end of their career. So they try to do what their professors are asking. And to prevent this, as European Network for Academic Integrity, we will be providing an online platform to help such people. But it is a very important issue. I realize that some journals are started to ask the contribution of each author. If there are 5 authors, for example, who contributed to which section, and at which rate. So maybe this could be this could give better idea about the contribution. However, it doesn't guarantee again.
Yeah, I think these are such important points, Salim, right? And with regards to the author order, it can change from one discipline to the next. So for example, I think in humanities and social sciences, first author is considered a desirable position to have in the author order. It's often considered the most prestigious. When I talk with my colleagues, at least in Canada, in medicine or in sciences, they tell me that the most important person is the last author. And so it really depends on the discipline. But I think one of the things is to be aware of things like manipulation in authorship. And I agree with Salim that as graduate students, you might not be in a position to advocate for this. And I think as well, things have changed over time. I remember as a graduate student, I was hired as a research assistant by a reputable professor in my school of education, and I ghost wrote the article for the professor. But my name didn't go on the article. And the philosophy was that I was getting paid as a research assistant, so I didn't get authorship, which of course that idea has been disputed now, and things have changed a lot since I was a graduate student. But we know that there are different traditions and backgrounds in different places. So I put a couple of resources there for you to at least become aware of this. And I put one in the chat that's not on the slide. We informally refer to it as the Vancouver Protocol on Author Inclusion. So who gets included as an author and who gets included with acknowledgements, but not as an author. And Salim is absolutely right. Some journals now ask you to indicate the author contribution, and some journals will ask you to indicate the percentage of which author contributed to what percent of the manuscript, which is an almost impossible task if you've ever worked with a collaborative group of authors, because you're all working in it together, but nevertheless, they don't want to receive a manuscript with, 75 names on it. And so these are just things to be aware of. But I agree that as a graduate student, you might not be in a position to advocate for yourself, but certainly when you are in a position to do that, this can be a useful thing. So let's move on to the next slide and talk about your actual writing process. And I think, when you read an article, one of the things, so we can move on to the next slide there, when you read an article or you look up an article, of course, the first thing you read is the abstract. And this is often, I think, the hardest part of the article to write. I'm not sure if Salim and Irene would agree with me. And so, Bibek, to answer your question, any limitation on the number of authors in a paper, it depends on the journal. I'm hearing now more and more journals are limiting. So some journals might limit to 5, others might limit to 10, others might have no limitation. So it does depend a little bit on the journal. Has anybody experienced some difficulty ever writing your abstract for your own journal paper? Sometimes I think an indicator of a poor abstract might be when people just simply repeat the first paragraph from the introduction and have it as an abstract. That's, I think, a lazy way to do it myself. And I agree that writing the abstract is something, I will actually write my abstract twice. I will write my abstract when I'm drafting my paper at the beginning to get some thoughts down, just to kind of move me into the writing process. And then I go back at the end and I rewrite it completely. So it's a brand new abstract by the end, because what I end up with at the end is not usually what I started out with. Yes, and then I edit it repeatedly for sure. What, Oscar, an author with more than 5,000 papers? Oh my goodness. I don't think I know 5,000 people. Wow. Okay, that's a great example. I'm gonna click on that so I can check it out later. This sample model for writing an abstract from ERIC, I found very useful in some of my work. So ERIC is the Education Resource Information Center. It's out of the United States, but they will publish and archive all kinds of educational research information and resources as well. And they suggest a 4-point method to write an abstract, stating the purpose of the article, the methods, so you might include there as well the methodology. For example, this is a qualitative research design. Data were collected using interviews, for example. And then in there, you might also talk about the number of participants. So, put in your N value, big N or small n, and then what were the results. from it. So a couple of, I would say 3 key themes identified were ABC, and then the implications of the so what. So when I look at an abstract, I should be able to tell what is the topic of it, what were the methods used, is it qualitative, quantitative, some other kind of method, how many participants were involved, how were data collected, and what were some of the results. And of course, you want to try and do that in 200 words. Some journals have a specific number of words. I've seen journals with want an abstract as small as 75 words. So this is just one model of writing abstracts, but I want to take a little pause and ask what questions you might have. Or Irene and Salem, if you want to add anything in here.
Yeah, I can't emphasize strongly enough how important the abstract is, because the abstract is the kind of gateway to your paper. So people will read the abstract first, and then they will decide whether to read your paper. So if you want people to read your paper, then you need a good abstract, and it needs to reflect what the paper's about. So it's really very important.
Thank you for that. And Salem, anything to add?
Sometimes in poor written abstracts, I see such expressions which do not provide any information. After the findings, conclusions will be drawn and implications will be presented. If you are writing such a sentence in your abstract, it means that you are using precious words in your abstract, because it gives no information to the readers. Please briefly conclude about your main concluding remark, and also provide implications, specifically pedagogical implications. For example, what might be the pedagogical implications that we can benefit from your concluding remarks. So this is quite important.
Yes, absolutely. And while I'm thinking of it here, I wanted to also share with you some advice that I got early on in my career, and that's to become a good writer. I think actually, Irene, you said this very thing at the beginning of our session. So just looping back to this, to become a good writer, we also read. And so I encourage you to read about writing. I've brought some of my favorite writing books. Some of them are in my university office, so I don't have access to all of them here, but I'm going to share them on the screen, and then I'll share a link with the titles and things. So one of the ones that I use a lot, Stephen King's book, actually, on writing. And even though King is a horror fiction writer, his advice on writing, I think, it transfers very well to nonfiction and even academic writing as well. One of my favorite quotations by Stephen King, and graduate students, you'll hear me say this as well, is he actually says that the road to hell is paved with adverbs. And so what he means by that is don't include a whole bunch of unnecessary words in your academic writing. So words like very, really, those kinds of things. You can often eliminate those from your academic writing to tighten it up, particularly if the journal has a manuscript guidelines around what your word limit is. So King's advice that the road to hell is paved with adverbs is one I like very much. And I'll also share Steven Pinker's book on a sense of style. As well, Pinker is not necessarily an academic writer, but talks about how to write well generally. And then this one is for scholars, and it's called Getting It Published. So you can feel free to take a screenshot of that. And another one I really like is, it's not here, it's in my university office. It's by a woman named Wendy Belcher, and it's called Writing Your Journal Article in 12 Weeks. And we actually use this in a course we teach with our master's students to teach them how to write well. So I'll put these here, these resources in the chat for you as well. And one of the things that Belcher says is to look, for example, at what the journal requires. And this is one of the key things when you're preparing your manuscripts. So let's have a look at this slide here, and let's maybe reflect on the chat for a minute. What might be some reasons that a journal might reject a manuscript? So I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this. Any experiences you've had or things you've heard from folks? This is a good question. Bebek says some journals ask to write both a short, brief summary and an abstract. How can you write it? I think that the method that we talked there about from the ERIC model, so writing about the purpose, methods, results, and implications can be a good way to write the abstract. And I see what you're seeing here is a brief, short, brief summary might be an expanded abstract, maybe 500 words or something. You can add a few more details. So yeah, let's look at what you've written here. Poor research design, absolutely, for sure. Might not actually fit within the scope. Yes, these are actually reasons that manuscripts get rejected from a journal outright, for sure. And if the author has not properly cited and followed basic guidelines of the methodology, yes, as well, yeah. And another one, we can move on to the next slide as well. Another reason that manuscripts might get rejected is they don't fit with the submission guidelines of the journal. So for example, when I receive a manuscript from the International Journal for Ed Integrity, I see it first before I send it out to reviewers. So I'll have a look at the manuscript. I'll see, does it fit with the aims and scope? And I will say, okay, does it follow, does it have, I mean, first of all, does it have citations and references? You might be surprised. Oh, and the other reason that a journal might get, manuscript might get automatically rejected is that we have part of the system at Springer Nature is that all manuscripts are run through Authenticate. So I get the originality reports for the manuscripts when they come in. And I think if Zenith is still here, she remembers, I think, a case where we had a manuscript come in with I think it was an 89% match with the originality score with another manuscript. So that for me was just, I looked at the originality report. I did conduct my own analysis, but ultimately determined that no, it was basically being submitted to this journal after having been published somewhere else. So I said no to that one, that they needed to rework the manuscript. Yes, all of these are excellent reasons why a journal might get rejected. And then as well, if the manuscript comes in and it doesn't follow the outline of the journal. So for example, International Journal for Ed Integrity, we don't use a numbered format for our manuscripts. So if something comes in and it looks like it has already been submitted and rejected from another journal because it follows some other style from a different journal, then I'll often also just reject it and say, no, you need to look at our submission guidelines first. Format-free submission is great. Yes, that is not too many journals, I think, have that yet, but I hope that that's coming for sure. And then if the journal exceeds the word limit, if the International Journal for Ed Integrity was set up without a word limit. One of the pieces of advice I got from Tracy Bertag when I was submitting as an author was around 8,000 words if the journal doesn't indicate a word limit for that one. And so when you're preparing your manuscript, go through the submission guidelines for each journal to ensure that your work fits. Irene and Salim, anything to add?
Fine for me, Sarah. As you are the editor of the journal, you are more knowledgeable about this topic.
Yeah, I'm happy with everything you said. It's great. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so you've prepared your manuscript, you've submitted it to the journal, you followed the guidelines, the editor says, oh, does a preliminary review and then sends it out to peer reviewers, and then you get your peer review back. So how many of you have had experience with peer reviews, and I'm interested to know from the chat, what's your experience been? If you're anything like me, the first time I got a peer review back as a graduate student, I cried. And it was horrible. And I was devastated because the reviewers were very unkind and cruel. And I wanted to leave academia. So I put the manuscript away and I never looked back at that manuscript again. So if you've ever had that opportunity, or not opportunity, if you've ever had that experience, please don't do that. Reach out to your supervisors, your mentors, those who care about you and your academic success, and then have them mentor you through the process of learning how to deal with a peer review. And peer reviews that come in, yes, we're aware of reviewer number 2, because learning to deal with peer reviews is tough, can be a tough job, and learning to, we said, to develop a thick skin or to look at it without becoming too emotionally involved with the reviewers. I think it's a very important way to approach it. Yes, and don't take it personally. And Irene has said this in so many of her own presentations. I've heard her say peer review is an opportunity to improve the work, and it can be, for sure. And when you have reviewers who are, and of course, when you have reviewers who are dedicated to helping you improve the work, it can be the best gift. Because they've taken their time, they're often volunteering. Some reviewers are unkind, and they're just not there to help you improve, and they feel that it's their job to criticize the journal. We try not to work with reviewers like that at the International Journal for Educational Integrity, but some journals do have reviewers like that, for sure. So we can move into so at some point, if you get this review back, you might take a breath, you think, okay, read it over, and then you might need to set the review and the manuscript aside, but please don't do what I did when I was a grad student and just abandon it completely. Give yourself a particular amount of time, like a week or two, and then come back to it, and then think about how you want to revise the work to improve it. Yes, Amy, that's a perfect feedback. Thank you for that. Yeah. And then you think about how do you want to respond to the peer reviewers in your manuscript. One way I learned to do it, it's not the only way, is to set myself, I take a Word document, I set myself up a table, and I take the reviewers' comments one by one, and I put them in one column of the table. And so I say reviewer number 1 at the top, and their comments, and I put them all on the table, and that's how I start to make sense of the review. And then I go through each one line by line, and I put my response to the reviewer in the next column as I'm reviewing the manuscript. And when you're improving your manuscript or reviewing your manuscript, highlight it in the manuscript so the editors and the peer reviewers can see what you're doing. And then you don't have to take all of the reviewers' comments, particularly if you have conflicting comments from 2 different reviewers. So reviewers typically won't see one another's reviews. And the most frustrating thing can be reviewer A says, I really like this part. And reviewer B says, well, I really hate this part. You need to change it to this. And then you need to make a decision about what you want to do with that. And if you want to decline to take some reviewers' feedback, you have the right to do that. So one of the things I've heard is that reviewers do not have the right to make the manuscript worse. And so I think that's one of the best pieces of advice. So you just provide a rationale as to why you did do that. You want to do it judiciously and show that you've taken the consideration, because the reviewers by and large are volunteers. And I don't know, maybe Salim and Irene, you can talk a little bit about your experience as reviewers. Typically, when I review a manuscript, I'll put in anywhere from 2 to 3 hours to review the manuscript. And I think often good reviewers will take time with the manuscript as well. So Irene and Salim, anything to add here?
Yes, I actually, as I said at the conference, I actually do quite enjoy doing reviews, but it can be very time consuming depending on the manuscript. And but there are different ways that the reviewers respond. Some take a kind of micro view and do lots of little fiddly little things, and some take a macro view and look at the big picture, and then some do a combination of those 2 things, and I try to do a combination of those 2 things, because sometimes sometimes a paper can be completely spoiled because of some grammar mistakes, and if those are left in, then that degrades the paper altogether. But the reviewers should really look at the big picture as well and see what's missing, see what's good, see what's bad, see what's all of those things. But it's really useful information, and I like to put a lot back into the author's kind of scholarship to try and help them to make the paper better. Not all authors are happy about that. So we do get a bit of a pushback sometimes from authors if they think you're being too cruel or too invasive but I think most peer reviewers really just want to help and really want to be constructive and helpful, and that's what I try to do.
And how about you, Salim?
It's really a tough job for the editor to find reviewers for the papers, because Akbar pointed out a very important issue: reviewers are not paid. Yeah, that's the issue. So reviewers, they are reading your paper, they are providing feedback for your paper only to contribute to the academia. So they are not paid for this. Therefore, they are devoting their time to make your paper better. Therefore, if you receive constructive feedback from a reviewer, it should be important for the development of your paper. However, I completely agree with Sarah. Reviewers, they do not have the right to make your paper worse. So please pay attention to the feedback that you receive from the reviewers, and you do not need to address all criticism. You do not need to change what they all suggest. However, provide a very carefully designed response letter to the editor and also to the reviewers. So if you are not addressing a criticism by the reviewer, please explain this very carefully why you reject it.
Great, thanks for that. We have one more slide and then we'll wrap up. And the last thing is, at the risk of sounding too jaded, expect rejection. It's happened to all of us. And you can read about the great writers, that they have been rejected multiple times or dozens of times. So we'll all get rejected. And if that happens, when it happens, take time away from your manuscript and collect yourself and revise and resubmit. And I'll tell you a story about a recent rejection I had last year with a team of writers that I was working with. We submitted to what we thought was a reputable journal. And actually the team relied on me to determine, was it a reputable journal? We submitted the manuscript and the editor gave it what I call a desk reject. That means it was rejected before being sent out for peer review. And the editor's rationale was that we had not cited enough papers from the journal itself to be sent out for peer review, which is a completely unethical way to approach your editorial job. You should not require writers to cite papers from the journal or to cite papers from the editor or anybody affiliated with the journal. So I said to the team, we're not resubmitting there. We'll find somewhere else to publish the paper. And it surprised me actually that the editor was that unethical. So you could be rejected for reasons that actually have nothing to do with your paper, but with the ethics of the journal. So I will end there, maybe just one more slide, and we can, we also have prepared some resources for you, and we will share the link with you in the chat. Many of the things that we've talked about today, we have put together for you in a takeaway and a handout that you get to have as your souvenir from the session today. I think that wraps us up, Irene.
Yes, I think it certainly does. So there we are. So I guess just a few minutes left. Are there any questions for any of us really from any of what we said? And I'll just quickly go back to the slide I skipped. Yeah, this was about what we can do, and hopefully take what you've, perhaps we should have put this at the end, take what you've learned here and develop it for yourself, share it with your colleagues, because if you're not familiar with some of these concepts, then it's likely your colleagues and maybe even your supervisors are not familiar with these things either. So feel free to share. And but we're here for a couple of minutes if you want to ask any questions. Very happy to take questions. And thank you very much for being a very polite and a very contributing audience. Very much appreciated. There's nothing worse than giving a talk and having complete silence on the other end. So it's great that you've participated, you've joined in, and clearly you're telling us that you've got something out of it, which is why we're here. That's why we do it. Anybody want to open up their mic and just say something? Feel free.
Maybe we could take down the slide so we can see everybody before or as we're closing.
Good idea. There we go. So you've got another 2 days to go, and some really rich topics to come up. I hope you're not getting too tired. It's quite an intensive session, isn't it, really? Akbar, you've got your hand up. Would you like to talk?
Yeah, it's just because I try to connect all of the presentations. I see that because of pressure within higher education, so it created like what there is one scholar called as a panic culture. So students get panic, lecturers get panic. So it seems that there are bodies outside higher education who looks at this opportunity. So for students, there are what it's called a cheating company, and then for lecturers, there are predatory journals. And there is one cases that I can relate to my context. And yeah, I think there might be another emerging bodies outside higher education to look at opportunities, and that's what I'm with their time.
I didn't quite catch all of that, Akbar, but thanks for that contribution. That's brilliant. Anybody else wanted to add anything? Okay, well, in that case, perhaps we can go to Salim and Sarah just to say goodbye and just round up what we've been saying.
Well, thank you, Irene. Thank you, Sarah, for joining us with this session. It was amazing experience, both for me and for the students, to welcome you here. We learned a lot from your experiences, and I'm sure our participants had a great opportunity to meet with you here. Thank you once again for all your contributions.
And thank you for the invitation to join you. And I've been taking notes on the names in the participant list, and I look forward to reading your papers in reputable journals.
Absolutely, and I hope you're inspired by what you've heard today to publish all your research in reputable journals, of course, and that you are now more informed in order to be able to understand where to publish and what to avoid. So I think we're finished. We're right up on the hour, so we managed to fit everything in. So well done, everybody, for juggling it all. And good luck with the next. Enjoy the next 2 days that are coming up. Don't be too exhausted by the end of Friday, and hopefully we'll see you again very soon.
Take good care.